Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett, and this week we have two special guests. They are the head coach and the team manager of the Coastal Cup champions, the Vancouver Wave, Christiaan Esterhuizen and Paddy Watson. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we always start these interviews with similar questions, and it's always about how you got involved in rugby, because especially in Canada, there's a lot of different paths you can go down. So what got you started in rugby specifically?
Paddy, you want to go?
Sure. So my father is from Dublin and played rugby growing up and immigrated to Canada. And when I was very young, he played for the Burlington Centaurs in Ontario. So some of my early memories are being around the rugby club there. And then we moved to Calgary and I decided I really wanted to play rugby and kind of looked into it and got my dad to sign me up for juniors at the Calgary Irish and played there. I also was involved with the starting of a rugby program at my high school. We had a principal with Welsh background come in and he wanted to get rugby back going at the school. It hadn't been one of the parts of the sports program for a good, I think, 20, 30 years. And we ended up winning a Division II city championship in our second year having the program back up and going, which is a great memory for me. And then I ended up coming out to the coast to go to UBC. I'm playing 4 years at UBC and then moved on to playing for the Ravens, UBC Old Boys out here. And that's how I ended up involved with rugby in Vancouver and in BC. And I think like a lot of Canadians, it starts with having a dad or a mom and someone from a more traditional rugby playing country like Ireland or like South Africa or wherever it is. And I just developed a lot of passion for the sport that way. I remember going to my first international at Lansdowne Road in Dublin, but also going to internationals in Alberta at Ellerslie Rugby Park in Edmonton and the CRU in Calgary. So quite different environments for my two citizenships in terms of what international rugby looked like, but really cool to see international rugby in different ways around the world.
I'm kind of curious about something that you did say there, because it sounds like yourself, it sounded like you played rugby a little bit before when playing at a bit of a younger age than high school. But when I got introduced to rugby, it was also my high school's first ever year learning rugby or having a rugby team, which ultimately meant that it was about 30 kids that had never even seen a rugby ball before, trying to figure out how to play it in 3 months or whatever, however long the run up was. I'm just curious, kind of what was that, experience like for you, kind of just playing on a team that literally has never existed before, as in high school? And then maybe if you actually had played before, it's was there a lot of trying to, because in my high school, none of us played ever. So I was just curious, what did you have to did the other kids on the team kind of have to rely on, say, maybe players like yourself to kind of explain what was going on? Or how was that experience kind of diving into Canadian high school rugby with, not necessarily a lot of people know what it is before high school?
Well, one connection I can make to this year with the Coastal Cup, Essie and I started the year trying to build our front row up a bit. And I remember in high school, you just kind of look around at the kids that, oh, you might be a prop. Why don't you come out? So part of it is recruiting guys that you think might have a future in the sport or might just enjoy it. And then in terms of the playing, yeah, I had experience. I'd been playing since I was 11. So I was able to kind of talk a lot on the field, and I'd usually end up hoarse by the end of the game. And I played a lot of my rugby career at 10 and 15, so it was good training for talking a lot and communicating a lot on the field. And I found in Alberta in high school at that time anyway, if you knew the game a little bit, there were things like quick tap penalties where you might have 28 or 29 other guys on the field don't know that you can just quick tap it and go, and you're able to exploit that.
Yeah, that was kind of our play too. We had like one guy that like ran track and then just played rugby for fun, and it would just be like quick tap, throw it to him, and then hopefully nobody's paying attention by that point. He scored a lot of tries doing that.
Yeah, I hit a few drop goals during high school as well, which I think is fairly rare in high school rugby in Canada, at least. And you kind of get quizzical looks from the other side, like, oh, you can just do that at any point in time. Like, yep, that'll be 3 points if you can put it over.
Yeah, knowing the rules is a pretty key part of the game. Christiaan, how about yourself? How did you get involved in rugby? I imagine it's slightly different than us who have grown up in Canada.
Yeah, it's not your typical Canadian story. Yeah, I think mine is maybe a typical South African story. I literally grew up with it. My dad was a good rugby player, and he carried on being involved, whether he was a coach or on the admin side or being a referee. He was always involved in rugby. He's still till today, he's 76 years old, and he's still, like, he got inducted into the Free State Referees Hall of Fame or something. He's still involved the other day. So yeah, I guess went with him wherever there was rugby. I grew up in Bloemfontein. It's quite a big sport in that city in South Africa. Well, it's obviously arguably the best rugby school in the world is in Bloemfontein, and I attended that school. So it's quite a serious thing, from the age of 9, 10 years old till you in grade 12. It's quite a serious thing, your rugby. And then I continued playing for the University of Free State, and then, I went to Cape Town and I started playing there. And then after my playing career in Cape Town, I started to coach rugby for them. And I literally coached, I think, every side at the University of Cape Town. I worked my way up. My last job there was the director of rugby. And then the decision came to immigrate, and it was great to use rugby and build contacts to get me to Canada and give me the opportunity over here. So yeah, when I arrived here, somebody from the Merolomas in Kitsilano, got to hear that I would like to come along, and they offered me the head coach job over there. And from there on, the Wave competition was something that was spoken about, and I got offered the head coach job of the Wave. So that's my entry into Canada, from South Africa. Yeah.
I just want to say I went to Queenie in Calgary, so that my school's in the same conversation as the best rugby school in the world.
So both of you have mentioned that you've had playing careers and then going into coaching careers, and both have mentioned how your fathers have had an impact on your rugby journey. Is there anyone in both your time as playing and becoming coaches or team managers, in Paddy's case, that you look to for like inspiration or has really helped you along your journey?
I think there's various people. There's always a mentor that you look up to. Look, I mentioned my dad. Obviously, he's the number one. But I think a guy like Alan Zondag, he's coach all over the world. He was Saracens coach, and his last job was the director of rugby at the Blue Bulls in South Africa. He's a guy I've been staying close to the last 5 or 6 years. There's a guy like John Dobson at the Stormers. So yeah, I stayed connected with those kind of coaches. A very inspirational coach to me was Alan Solomons. I played a little bit for him and learned so much from him. So yeah, I guess it's just keeping connected with high profile coaches, and they become mentors and kind of friends to you. Yeah.
Yeah. How about yourself, Paddy? Anybody that kind of helped guide the path through rugby throughout the years?
I guess the names that kind of stick out first when I think of that are my coaches at UBC. So I got to play under Spence McTavish, who's a legend of Canadian rugby, and Rod Holloway. And I went through some really tough practices under those two, but they were always there for the players and kind of inspiring, and you still see them around. I got to have a beer with Spence after the opening game of the Coastal Cup when we played against UBC. So those are the two names that stick out to me.
Okay, now, as you're both involved in the Vancouver Wave, we're going to eliminate any Wave players from this question. But is there anyone, either a current player or former player, that you are or were always excited to see step out on the pitch and represent their team or their country?
Is that in Canada?
Anywhere. Well, throughout. So any country, any team, but anyone that when you sat down and you saw them on TV, you're like, I'm really happy this guy's playing today.
Yeah, I think I grew up with a guy called CJ van der Linde. He was my friend growing up, and he ended up playing 80 matches for the Springboks, mainly at tight end. But growing up, I saw the guy train, and I saw how hard he worked. And I mean, the guy's a front row forward. He's over 100 kgs, 120 kgs, and he can run 100 meters as fast as the backs. And that didn't come automatically. He worked for it. So, seeing how we trained and how we played professional rugby, I always waited for him to get the ball into some open space. It didn't happen a lot, but the one or two times it happened as a tight end, I really got excited and enjoy seeing him with the ball in hand.
For me, I had the chance to play with and generally sit lower on the depth chart at UBC with Harry Jones, and getting to see him up close a lot. It was always exciting. I remember some incredible performances he had against Cal and against UVic, and just a fantastic player to see in person. And then also played a little bit with Connor Trainer at the Ravens here in Vancouver, and it was the same. You could just see the power and the skill that he had when he's playing in the BC Premier League. And I've gotten the chance to see those two play for Canada as well live. And I think they're both just electric, very good players. And it's kind of sad that that generation is all kind of retiring from sevens and from Canadian duty. In terms of like a hero growing up, watching Ireland and getting to see Brian O'Driscoll a lot. He was just an incredible player, and someone that I looked up to and I think is a good role model.
Yeah, all phenomenal names rattled off there. I'm going to go back to Essie just for a quick question before we kind of dive into the 2021 Coastal Cup campaign. And just, I know, like, so you were coaching at University of Cape Town in South Africa prior to immigrating to Canada. And I know as part of that, you got to play against like UBC in the World University Rugby Invitational. And I'm just kind of, in general, kind of wondering, before moving to Canada, what was your like interpretation, or how did you view Canadian rugby as someone growing up in South Africa?
I was a bit worried, to be honest, after we played UBC, but I think it was just a very good day for us, and not the best day for UBC. And as I progressed and watching UBC's progress throughout the tournament, and I could see they're quite a competitive team. I was happy to see how well they were coached, and that they got structure, and that made me feel like, the teams are being coached quite well over here. I think the main difference between maybe a standard South African and a Canadian rugby player is just that tempo and the ability to create intensity is maybe something that's part of the culture, or they are born with. I'm not too sure where it comes from, but I feel like in terms of technical coaching, there's no difference. It's maybe just the player has got a little bit more rugby IQ and then can create tempo and intensity. Yeah.
Perfect. And so we'll get into like the Coastal Cup now. And I mean, we've talked about it on our podcast a little bit as the season kind of went on, and from the initial announcement that the Coastal Cup was going to happen. But we do have like a lot of decent number of listeners, a surprisingly high number of listeners actually when I was looking at it, that aren't from Canada, or at least they're not listening to things on a device from Canada. And I was just kind of wondering if it's like, before we really get into it, can we just get your guys' kind of description and explanation on what the Coastal Cup is and how it came about, and why the people involved in rugby in British Columbia think it's going to be a great thing moving forward.
Yeah, I think a big part of the mission statement of the Coastal Cup is bridging the gap between BC Premier League or fairly high level amateur rugby that happens in Canada and the MLR and the Canadian national team, Rugby Canada. So it's an opportunity for players to put themselves up for a higher level competition, have an opportunity for visibility. Maybe that leads to an MLR contract. Maybe that leads to Rugby Canada identifying them or seeing them as something different than they thought of them before. Gives a chance for a team like we fielded with the Vancouver Wave to have more imports on the field, because there are import restrictions for the BC Premier League. So that can lead to a little bit of a stronger side, which is stronger competition for our Canadian homegrown guys, and also players that might be eligible for Canada at some point in time. So I think a big part is visibility and the chance to have something that's a little bit in between professional rugby or representing the country and just going out every Saturday here in BC to play for your club. I'm someone that was never in the conversation to be picked by Rugby Canada. And I know that having played in the BC Premier League, some weekends you'll have a couple Canadian players or guys that have played pro in Europe or in the Southern Hemisphere. And you also have players that really are just looking to be a bit more social with their rugby, maybe play at a decent level. But it's nice to have a competition where you're really gathering all the players that want to compete at a higher level and might have aspirations beyond what those more social players have.
And like, we'll kind of get into the team a little bit, but like, how do you guys feel like the season went in, like, just from, like you said, the idea of just giving players a chance to kind of maybe play at a high level a little bit more regularly, possibly bridge that gap between club rugby and major league rugby. And also, I mean, like, Coastal Cup has like a website up. You guys are obviously doing a lot of things on like social media and trying to build up the brand. And so just kind of from that, like, sort of off field perspective, like, how did the first season go? Any like challenges, or kind of getting the Coastal Cup kind of off the ground? And just in general, what was it like being involved in the first year of a competition?
I think there were a lot of challenges, and some were probably more visible and others maybe less so. One thing I think you two probably picked up on was streaming. Some weeks it looked pretty good, and other weeks it was an impossibility, whether that was weather or just the infrastructure where the games were being played. We had a lot of issues with fields this year because of the insane amount of rain we got out here and some other issues related to that. So there were some games moved around. Essie and I spent a lot of time on the phone and emailing people through situations like that. But I think despite those challenges, I think the groundwork was done to build a really good competition where we are going to be able to hopefully fulfill those ideas that I talked about before and give people a platform. And I think the most difficult year is always going to be the first year. And we were a lot of good games, some really close scores, and even the teams at the lower end of the table really built, and I think setting themselves for the other seasons that they have coming up, or in terms of UBC and UVic going to the University Rugby Championships where UBC won. So we were fortunate to beat them in the first game of the year, but I think they still used the Coastal Cup to prepare them and go and win that competition.
So you've talked about preparing for the tournament and the tournament itself. Obviously, it feels that it's been a great success for rugby in BC. What are things that both of you would like to see of the Coastal Cup for both next year and in the long term?
Yeah, I think the answer's proofs in the pudding almost. Like the quality of rugby is definitely a step up, from your standard, BC rugby league match, and it definitely breached Paddy referred to between the MLR and club rugby. I think the biggest change I would like to see is just a move away from. There's a lot of people that obviously weren't involved in the initial discussions around the Coastal Cup, and they didn't, completely bought into the concept of this competition. So, I would really love just a little bit more buy-in from everybody else. Start seeing if you have a couple of players representing a team like the Wave, opportunity to play with the better players against better players, and when they return back to the clubs, they're a little bit sharper maybe than they were before. So sure, that's a big thing I want to see. Maybe the scheduling can help a bit with that. Start the competition slightly earlier, a couple of weeks earlier, so we don't interfere too much with the club season. But I think those are the things Paddy referred to. That's the first step happened this year, and a lot of things need to happen for year two. If this thing wants to grow, or is going to grow. So
obviously, the Vancouver Wave, you guys are the inaugural Coastal Cup champions. You went 6-0 throughout the tournament. So I'm assuming from a coaching perspective, there can't be too much to complain about there. But
you don't know Essie.
Okay, well, all right. First question: what was there to complain about during a perfect 6-0 season?
Oh, thanks, Paddy, throwing me under the bus here. No, look. I think I referred to that the challenge was just to get the clubs to buy in and actually giving their best players. I don't feel like the Wave was a true representation of the open clubs and what they can offer to them. And I guess that made us think as a coaching setup a little bit harder, and we had to be a little bit more creative in terms of how we wanted to play. For me, it was clear we had a lot of strengths in a few areas, and we were fairly weak in a few areas, and we had to play around that, and we had to adapt our game plan to that kind of level. So I think what gave us the edge was we really focused on, we coached the stuff that the players could do. We focused on that and really did that well. And then, found a few gaps in the opposition, the way they play to try and exploit that. So it was really down to be simple and effective coaching philosophy, with the players that we've got.
Who are some of the Wave players that really impressed you as the season kind of went on? Obviously, you had Mike Maloney, who led the league in scoring. So, I mean, that's obviously, a name that kind of sticks out immediately, just kind of looking at the stats. But who are some of the Wave players that got you either really excited to watch, or you're kind of really proud of the way that they, that they developed as the season went on?
Yeah. I think our captain, Neil Courtney, he was our tight head prop. I mean, that guy was a rock for us. The way he led the players, the way he kept the guys loyal to the cause. Our two centers, I thought, were a little bit better than the rest, Colby Mason and Isaac Winter. Mike Maloney, phenomenal kick of a rugby ball. I don't think in my coaching career I've coached somebody that can kick a ball better than him, and he just seemed to have time and scan the space and hit it, whether it's a banana kick or up and under or whatever, he just hits the spot. So and the way we played, he kicked a lot of things for us. It was a bit of a different approach to the other teams, but he came in as a very effective weapon.
So Paddy, I noticed as on your shirt there you have the Mariloma rugby logo kind of recolored in blue and upside down, and as you guys honored your teammate Dan Wigley, who passed away unfortunately before the season starts. Can you just kind of talk about the tribute that you had, which is obviously, on the shirt there, your locks only wore number 25 instead of the traditional 5 during this season as well. Can you just kind of talk about, what the tributes that you guys did? And I'm assuming, that kind of provided a little bit of the inspiration behind, fueling the championship season as well.
Yeah, before the last game, before we beat the Pride, I put together a video that kind of told the story of the season, including Dan's tragic passing, and then we had some messages for the players, and it ended with one of Dan's friends, Steph, sharing a message to the team, and was really powerful. And it was kind of our inspiration through the season, was to honor Dan. So like you said, we had the inverted Marilomas logo on our sleeve with the W for Wigs, and we had his number 5 jersey on the sideline or in the in goal and hanging in the locker room with us throughout the whole year. And then kind of strange when you saw our lineup, our match day 23, and would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 25. But that was another way to honor him, just to have that 5 with us, but not on the field. So it was pretty big challenge for us dealing with that right before the season kicked off. But a lot of really powerful moments, and guys supporting each other and making sure that we made the season count.
Christian, do you have anything to add to the the tributes and stuff that you guys did for Dan? And I know obviously he plays for the club that you coach, so I'm assuming can you just maybe talk to the impact that Dan had on his teammates and the coaching staff and friends and family and all the people around him?
Yeah, I mean, I had the privilege to coach Dan for about 4 months of my life, and he was in the leadership group for both the Lomas and the Wave. By vote, a very popular guy in the team. And when the tragic incident happened, and obviously me being close to the Lomas, I saw how the whole rugby community, how strong it is and how special it is, and how they got together and supported each other. It was incredible. It was honestly something I've never experienced in that kind of way. Some people deal with things differently, and how the guys that really struggled got support from the others, by a call or even a walk, and then professional support. So that was special to see how it brought everybody together. And obviously, Dan said to me when I my first one-on-one with him, he said he's never won a trophy in rugby. And when the Wave opportunity came to it, he said, let's go and win this. So, it was a good motivation for us to try and go and win this thing for Dan. And luckily it worked out well. But yeah, I mean, he was missed, and we will continue to miss the big man.
There's a lot of great talent for rugby out in BC, both playing for the Wave and against the Wave in the Coastal Cup. We've already had the announcement of some players, especially in the Pacific Pride, that have been signed to MLR teams. Are there any other players that you can see playing in the MLR or even overseas in the next few years?
They are our 2 hookers, Matthias Suez and Pete Ingoldsby. They're both a little bit younger than kind of our average across the squad. And Matthias had fantastic fitness, and was a lead by example guy for us in terms of that. And Pete, having played for the Canada under-20s, and he's going to be playing for the Pride in the future here. So yeah, like I said, because of the age profile, those are 2 that I would point out. Essie?
Yeah, I think it's Paddy has mentioned the age, and I believe for the 2027 World Cup, and with this Canada selects team, we had to consider that So kind of the first thoughts were to limit the age to players 25 and younger. But as the selection process started to happen, we started to open it up to a few players, over the age of 25, because, that Rugby World Cup is 6 years away. There's nothing wrong with a 4-year-old season second rower, that can make it. So there's a lot of guys that's just got their P and they're 1 year away from citizenship. So it's hard for me to tell you exactly when they will get those papers, but I think spread over the entire Coastal Cup, there's quite a lot of players that will be eligible for Canada quite soon, and I think that can help the cause in Canada. And in terms of the MLR, I just think there's if some players want it and they don't have full-time jobs, they will get rewarded with contracts. A guy like, I don't know. I mentioned Neil Courtney, the guy's an engineer. He certainly is good enough to play at that level, but whether he wants it, that's a different question. So I think there's a lot of those cases.
Speaking of looking ahead to the 2027 World Cup, it's how do I put this nice? It's not been the best year for Rugby Canada, especially with the men's 15 structure. Now, I know neither of you are involved in it, but even from a fan perspective, what would you like to see change so that when it comes to 2027, Canada it definitely qualifies for it?
Yeah, I think I think what I would like to see is they're buying into I think this will take 12 years maybe to fix, and be more deliberate with your recruitment. Be patient with players. Go and recruit certain positions every year, from a tier 1 nation, and spend the money and the investment on this player. I don't know what the World Rugby rule is now, 3 years or 5 years. You bring an 18-year-old over, by the time he's 23, he can play Test rugby, and that's young for Test rugby in any case. So, maybe that we don't want to become a Japan where you just, a bunch of exports. You want to maintain majority, I guess, of the team to be Canadian. But as I said earlier, I feel like if you bring a few of the tier 1 players over, they raise the intensity and tempo automatically. And if you have a few key players, key positions, and you build with them, and you start to create over a 12-year period like a conveyor belt of these players, I think there's no doubt, that Canada will qualify. My short time here, I've coached. I'm involved in a coaching academy, so there's schoolboys, and I coach up to this Canada selects team now. So I've seen the spectrum. There's enough athletes in this country. The players are there. It's a bit of rugby IQ that lacks, and I think, especially going into senior rugby, when we see more players from the UK and Southern Hemisphere just arrive in Vancouver to play rugby, I think I did a fun exercise one night with our team, and about half the team were born outside of Canada. And with my club as well, there's a lot of UK players. So the standard of club rugby is not bad, because all these influences are lifting the standard to be acceptable. So you build on that with a good recruitment program. Canada has to be in the World Cup, in my view.
I spent 4 years living in Tokyo, and actually spent some time teaching over there prior to that. So I watched Japan kind of rise into what they are in World Rugby now. So without getting too detailed or anything, I'd like to see Canada try and find some continuity and build the player base more, so that they can kind of start the upward path that Japan's been on for quite a while now, and reverse the downward path, since Canada and Japan tied at the World Cup in 2011, and it's kind of been completely different situations since then. And having played rugby in Japan, I don't think there's a big difference in the amateur rugby. I think it's actually probably better somewhere like BC than it is what you see mostly in Japan. But there is a lot of lot of money and quite a bit of structure, and they have been able to find some continuity with the national team structure, not changing coaches too much and finding some key players to build off of. So just as a fan wanting Canada to do well, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what we would all like to see at a certain point here. You did, Patty, too. Like before we kind of started recording, you kind of we mentioned that like your job as the team manager for the Vancouver Wave, and you kind of chuckled and said that at the in the Coastal Cup that means a lot of different things. So during the first year of the Coastal Cup, first year of the Wave in the Coastal Cup, it's like, what did that job as a team manager kind of entail as the season went on?
Well, for us with the Vancouver Wave, we were a bit of a nomad team because we didn't have one home. We have technically Brockton Oval as the home field for the Vancouver Rugby Union, but we didn't play any games or train there. We trained at the Capellanos, we trained in Marilomas. We had Empire Field here, a turf field in Vancouver. So moving around a lot and making sure we were still organized and that everyone had what they needed to succeed. That was an important thing. And then everything, sort of things we've mentioned already, like social media. I think I got my Instagram credentials boosted quite a bit by this competition. Making sure that games actually got off, because with the weather and with other things getting in the way, one thing that I'm looking forward to in future years of the competition is some of the double headers or even triple header days that we had planned that unfortunately didn't come to fruition at least the way we imagined this year because of complications. And then things like trying to make sure there's good streams, having actual talk about who's on the field is something that we're going to want to continue to improve. Some teams did a good job with that, like Van East had a pretty good setup when it wasn't completely underwater to stream the games this season. We were new to that. The Tide on the island, I know they were kind of new to it and had some complications. The game, the UBC versus Pacific Pride game in Port Alberni, obviously had some complications being at a different venue and some funny camera work and things. So there's a lot that needs to be organized, and I feel like I kind of dealt with everything, every wrench that could be thrown into the works possible this year, and still came out with an enjoyable experience. And that was thanks to the coaching staff and players who made it worthwhile, making sure we finished with.
So one thing that comes up a lot of time for Canadian players is that they need to have like the pathways of how they progress through their rugby journey, whether that's be to playing in MLR, playing a team. So let's say there was a 8-year-old kid who saw the Pacific Pride fall to the Vancouver Wave, saw the Wave lift the Coastal Cup, and decides, right, I want to become a rugby player and I want to play for the Vancouver Wave. What is the pathway for someone that would either be of middle school or high school age, going from playing rugby either in BC or maybe even out of BC to playing for the Vancouver Wave?
Well, I've done some coaching here in schools in Vancouver, and it's a bit of a battle right now, but trying to keep rugby strong in schools here is important. So making sure that 8-year-old goes to a high school where they're going to be able to play rugby and get some good coaching. As he mentioned, he's involved in an academy here. I've done some coaching with the UBC Rugby Academy, so going for those opportunities when possible. And then for me, my path was playing rugby at UBC, and TWUs trying to build a program here, and some good programs in Eastern Canada. So making sure that play and stick with it through university, or if you don't go to university, to your club, you need those players to keep playing, and that's how you're going to be able to sort of be in your prime and play your best rugby, and maybe have a chance to play for a team like the Vancouver Wave, or another team that is even of higher aspirations.
Yeah, we have with Van City Rugby Academy, we got permission from the schools to go and teach rugby in the PE classes. So we started in September with that. So, you know, this is so important. Like, children touch a rugby ball, and they wouldn't have done it perhaps in the entire primary school, or you call it your elementary school. Sorry, I'm speaking South African terms.
I'm British. I understand what you're talking about.
You do. So, you know, in my example, I've got two rugby loving boys. They're very young, but already, you know, they're seeing NFL on the TV and hockey on the TV. That's a sport they're already playing in the street. You know, you don't get exposed to rugby on television and around you in your culture. But I think, you know, we need to make these attempts to get it to the schools, get the children at a young age, and just, you know, kind of be in their face with the rugby ball. Let them choose the rugby ball over the basketball. I believe that's a favorite ball children pick on the playground, is a basketball. But you know, yeah, as rugby coaches and as a rugby community, that's what we need to do: get rugby balls into schools.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like I said at the start, it's like don't even think I ever like touched a rugby ball or even seen what one looked like until high school. And even at that, like that was like the first year that our school ever had a rugby team. So it was like everybody was kind of brand new to it. But you know, once people kind of started playing, everyone was kind of like, man, I wish I knew about this sport a little bit earlier, right? So, you know, I think if you like just even across Canada, like if we can get like more kids actually playing the game or watching the game, and I think like it could definitely help grow. And I think that's what I think is like a great thing about also what I know, Patty, you mentioned like the streaming and actually being able to like see the game and kind of making rugby a lot easier to watch within Canada is obviously like, you know, MLR is kind of available on TSN and stuff too. So hopefully that kind of like brings some eyes and we're able to capture a few fans at a younger age.
Yeah, I commented one of the days this year during the competition was when Canada played against Chile, and the Canadian soccer team had a game, and Canadian game was behind a paywall, or the Rugby Canada game was behind a paywall, and I paid to watch it. But I said to some other coaches and rugby people around, how many kids do you think know that Canada played a rugby international today versus how many know that they played a soccer international? And soccer is a hugely popular sport all over the world, but it still would be nice for more young eyes watching that rugby game.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end the interview there. Christiaan and Paddy, thank you so much for joining us. Wish you all the best with the Vancouver Wave, and looking to see if you can do the double at the Coastal Cup in 2022.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your awesome work and your cool podcast. And Paddy introduced me to it earlier this year, so I'm enjoying it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paddy, for setting it up. All right. Bye.
Thanks again to Christiaan and Paddy from the Vancouver Wave for joining us. Great to have two guys not on the pitch, but like behind the scenes and seeing how the Coastal Cup came about. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously they had a pretty great run this year. In the Coastal Cup, you know, they're undefeated, undisputed champions. And it is interesting to hear like kind of both like, you know, Christiaan talking about his experience, you know, coming to Canada from South Africa, and how, you know, his thoughts on kind of the Canadian and / BC like, you know, rugby system. Also from Paddy's point of view of just like, you know, what a lot of the behind the scenes what a lot of the work behind the scenes that was needed to take place to make the Coastal Cup happen. And you know, I just hope that going forward, the you know, it's like people continue to tune in. to the games. People watch that game. They're gonna have the Canada West Selects are gonna play against the Seattle Seawolves, and I mean ultimately too, like Patty mentioned the streaming a lot, and we kind of talked about that too. And I think that if you haven't seen a lot of these games, you're kind of interested in you know in watching them. They're still all up on YouTube, right? So it's like I would yeah, so definitely, go check those out. And yeah, like it'll, enjoy some of the West Coast rugby, enjoy some of the Coastal Cup games. And hopefully going into next year they continue to grow, grow the brand of the Coastal Cup, grow the brand of the Vancouver Wave.
All right. Well, we're going to take it from BC back to Ontario because we've got some news from the Toronto Arrows going forth. Both have coaching news and player news, but we'll start with the coaching news, and that is that Francois Wattier, former head coach of the Canada's women's team, as well as the interim coach for the men's team, will be joining the Arrows as a coaching consultant from January 2nd, 2022, because as we all know, New Year's Day can be pretty hard, especially if you're hungover. So always start your new job the day afterwards. But yeah, he has an impressive resume. He brought the women's team to the 2014 Rugby World Cup final, the furthest Canada's ever gotten in the tournament. As the interim coach for the men's team, he guided them to joint second in the 2016 America's Rugby Championship. Again, the highest they've ever finished in that competition as well. And this won't be Ratier's first instance with the Arrows. He was actually part of the coaching staff during the rugby rally that was held in October. Jamie McKenzie has gone on social media and said that this is a great addition with the team. And he was speaking when we had him on our 100th episode about the importance of like the coaching staff as well. So yeah, this seems to be like another great addition to the Arrows coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously he brings that experience from, as you said, kind of leading the women's national team to a World Cup final appearance, and he's had great success at that level, and as well as what he's currently doing in the province of Quebec too, right? So there's a lot of Radier is obviously doing a lot of great work. He's a very like highly sought after coach, and it's not surprising that the Toronto Arrows would want a coach of his caliber to be part of their staff, and kind of lending his thoughts and his ideas on how the game of rugby should be played to the Toronto Arrows. And I think ultimately, you look back on some of the changes that have been made, and I think some of the changes that have been made, some of the new faces that have been brought into the Toronto Arrows coaching staff, and it's a great staff all around. And I mean, Radier just obviously headed by Pete Smith now, but Radier just kind of adds to it, right? You got some of the best coaches in Canada are now seem to be finding their way to the Toronto Arrows.
Well, speaking of people who impressed during the rugby rally, we also need to talk about the re-signings and new signing for the Toronto Arrows in terms of the player department. So unfortunately, Derek, you weren't there to witness it live, but one of the re-signings, Mitch Richardson, had an absolutely stellar performance at the rugby rally. This will be his fourth campaign with the Arrows. He's already made 14 appearances, 6 of which are starts. And, he's come through the Pacific Pride, graduate of the Ontario Blues and McMaster's. Speaking of Pacific Pride, I'm using a lot of segues here from previous things I've said. Siaki Vikilani will also be back this time for his second season. After his first season was so impressive, he joined the Canadian squad during the summer. So, he's had a very impressive debut season, and it was curtailed by injury. He only made 2 appearances and 1 start for the club. So here's hoping that he's fighting fit for the 2022 season. But someone who was called up for the Arrows for the rugby rally is Andrew Norton. So Andrew Norton is a South African-born Spanish player. He's had 3 caps for Los Leones in 2019, including a victory over Russia in the Rugby Europe Championship. He's had 6 years of playing in Spain's Division de Honor. And like I said, he's from South Africa. He went through the Sharks Academy system. He's played for the under-19s and under-21s Super Rugby clubs, junior teams. He's played for the University of Cape Town and the Ilkley Tigers in the Varsity Cup. He moved to Toronto in 2021 and has actually been playing grassroots rugby with Barmy Beach. That's who was picked up on the Arrows radar and what eventually got him on the rugby rally roster for 2021, and clearly has impressed so well that he's now a full member of the squad. So Norton at half and centre, Mitch Richardson at centre, and Siaki Vikilani at number 8. So the Arrows have now signed 29 players for next season. They just need that one more player, and they can do 15 on 15.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably going to have to sign a few more than just 30. Yeah, man, I like the signings and stuff. I think Richardson. I've been a big fan of Mitch Richardson. I know, it's tough sometimes when you're playing on the same team as in the past seasons. Spencer Jones, Ben Lesage. Previous seasons too. You had like Dan Moore in the mix at center as well, with just Septitois. The Arrows are deep at center, man. Which is a crazy thing to say when they have traded, the guy that was the all-star center. But yeah, you have Detroit, Richardson, Tafuga, Jones. Now you have Norton too, that can also play can also play center, and he can play fly half. So, which is always a nice little bit of versatility, right? So now so not only are you like super deep at center here with some of these signings, right? So I kind of just listed off the guys that can play center on the team, but then you got Will Kelly, Sam Malcolm, and Andrew Norton that can all play fly half. Right. And I think, so it is kind of exciting. Some building some depth in the backs. And, I think kind of like looking at the squad right now, it's, there's still, obviously we're still waiting on a handful of names to be announced and stuff, but it's kind of looking like right now you need maybe need a hooker, and you definitely need some more wingers and fullbacks to probably be signed. Be interesting to see what any of the other names that start to come out are gonna be. But I mean, ultimately kind of looking like they're building up to being a pretty solid squad. And then, even with a couple, like obviously, a couple big names have departed, but also, a couple big names are also coming in, right? And Norton too. And it's like it's always good to add more capped guys, right? And it's playing for Spain and stuff like that's a good team. And so Andrew Norton kind of coming in, hopefully he'll be able to bring a little something to the Toronto Arrows. As you kind of mentioned, went through like the Sharks Academy and stuff in South Africa. I wonder if he went to the best rugby high school in the world, like Christiaan and Paddy both claimed that they did in our previous segment there. But either way, seems like a great player. So Arrow's got a little bit of back depth, and obviously Vikilani, the back row's stacked, man. The back row's crazy good. So excited to see what Vikilani can do. And I guess what really will hopefully be his first healthy pro season, because he did miss quite a bit of time last year. And so hopefully all healed up and be able to hit the ground running next season.
We obviously want to see all our players in shape and making sure that they're all good coming the 2022 season. Now, this bit of news just came out today, and it's actually a little bit of congratulations, because recent signing and second round draft pick for the Arrows, Bryce Warden, as part of 278 UBC Thunderbirds athletes, has achieved all Canadian status, one of the highest status of student athlete. So Bryce, congratulations on being an all Canadian. Maybe work it into like your nickname I'm sure that all your teammates will be giving you a lot of stick for it as well. Okay, now there's been a lot of other signing news going on in MLR, and we're going to start off with LA, where interestingly, I think this was a public secret in that it was announced by lots of other media, but now the Giltinis have officially made it known that Will Chambers of the Sharks in NRL in Australia will be joining LA. And Will Chambers plays at centre in Union. So it's nice that Ben Lesage has an understudy that can fill in whenever he's not feeling well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, obviously like a lot of people kind of online, because I don't think like LA really did not help curb this discussion, because they directly mentioned, that he could be a replacement for the departing Adam Ashley Cooper, who is retired and now part of their coaching staff, which to me on all I thought was hilarious because it's the exact same sentence that I think they copy and pasted that paragraph from the Ben Lesage article as well. But ultimately you kind of look at that and it's LA's backline is LA's backline stacked. Like I don't know. Like I've seen like, some people are kind of starting to put like their predictions and stuff up on like Reddit and things. And I'm like, I see that, they have, some people on like some of the prediction threads and stuff aren't putting LA as like number one in the West. And I'm like, how? But like, yeah, you're the champs until you lose. Right. And it's like, they seem like, even though they're losing some guys, they're gaining quite a bit. Right. So I think, but ultimately, I think it seemed like there was some concern for like Ben Lesage's spot on the team. And, I wouldn't be too worried about it, to be honest. Like, I don't think I want to be worried about it at all. Ben Lesage literally got an award, or maybe not an award, an honor for being named the best outside center in Major League Rugby last year. Like he's the first team All-Star at outside center, which is nuts because LA also has the guy that was first team All-Star at inside center. So in all
the reason why they don't have the first choice or second choice for outside center is because Adam Ashley Cooper has retired.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So LA centers, much like Toronto, LA centers are pretty good. But yeah, their backline is going to be nuts. But I think like ultimately, like competition is a good thing too, right? Like we heard, we just heard, Christian was talking about, how bringing in like foreign players can help like raise the level of talent and help push the pace at the club level and at that, the Vancouver Wave Coastal Cup level, right? And it's the same thing here. Like if you know what I mean, like it's the same thing here. Like if you don't think Ben Lesage is going to become a better rugby player because he has to compete against like Will Chambers and Billy Meeks for playing time, I don't know what to tell you. Like he's going to be better because he has his level of competition just on his team is going to be incredibly great. And like LA is not going to, I don't think LA is going to make that trade too if they don't intend on using Ben Lesage. And also like we've heard on our own podcast how much DTH loves playing with Ben Lesage and how highly DTH thinks about him, right? And that's obviously, he's a big part of that team down there too. I don't think competition is necessarily a bad thing, right? So if so like it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for sure. But also like the other thing is too is like even in the press release, right? It's like they go like Will Chambers coming over from league, right? So like that's going to be an adjustment for him, right? Because he is coming over cross code, and I mean even if he has played union before, he's been in the NRL for the past decade or so, right? It's like that's going to be an adjustment coming to the other code. And secondly too, like as the press release says, like he can play wing. Right. So it's like if you're LA, it's like, yeah, maybe he can compete there, but maybe he competes at wing. And maybe who's LA's fly half? Has LA announced the fly half for this year yet? Or are we still thinking Cardi? Because Gidow's obviously retired.
Yeah, I think it'll be Cardi, but maybe they'll pull
all
a
right.
wild card and sign.
And Goddard's coming back too, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's like, so like if you're LA right now, it's like you could be like looking at a backline that's like Goddard, Cardi, Meeks, Lesage, DTH, Chambers, and then uh whoever their fullback is. But like, who is their fullback right now? Actually, do they have a fullback sign?
Well, they haven't. I don't think they've announced their entire squad yet. So
Okay, right. So it's like kind of based on potentially what we know, right? Like you kind of look at those names as like that's a very formidable backline, right? So maybe that's LA's play too. Maybe you put Chambers on the wing, right? And obviously they had some great wingers in LA last year with DTH, Ryberg, James, right? So it's like the wing was a tough spot to get playing time too in LA, right? So I mean, they're obviously looking to defend that title. So plenty of big names joining LA, and that doesn't even like we've seen all the signings all year long, right? Even bringing like DTA or Justice Sears Duru into the fold too, right? So LA looks like they're going to be a pretty formidable team, but I don't think I would be concerned about Ben Lesage's playing time, man. Like he's already proven that he's the bet one of the he's already proven that he's the best outside center of Major League Rugby and has like the actual honor to claim it. So I mean, even from that right now, I would be, if you're a handicap in LA's depth chart, I'm still probably putting Ben Lesage in that spot because you traded for the all-star center at that position, right? So it's like you gotta that's his until somebody takes it away from him. So we'll see how it goes though.
We will see. Now, so there's been some movement going on in New York because it was announced that Sam Windsor was leaving Houston. He posted this on social media about a month or two ago. It has now been announced by Rugby New York that it'll be Sam Windsor moving to the Big Apple and leaving the Sabercats for the Roosters, which I think is a huge signing for New York. And this will be Windsor's 5th season in Major League Rugby. Keeping it out east, Chance Wengluski is also joining New York from Atlanta. So I know that Chance Wengluski was a big part of that Atlanta forward pack, but now he'll be playing with New York this time. So dressing in the blue and orange.
Yeah, a couple of really big signings for Rugby New York, and I'm still getting used to not saying United every time I mention this team's name. Obviously Sam Windsor, he's been one of the premier fly halves in the league over the course of the early kind of days of the season. Kind of it's sometimes tough to judge, because he's was clearly the best player on some really bad Houston teams. And coming to New York, that was obviously they were a playoff team last year, and Dan Holland's head is kind of is on his way out, and Windsor is a big pickup to kind of fill that fly half role, and obviously he's going to be able to combine with Andy Ellis, so it's a pretty good halfback pairing in New York. As you know, it's one of those things, man. It's this offseason, it's kind of really looking like, and I have Chance Wengluski joining as well. It's really looking like a lot of like, the playoff teams, like the teams that were really good last year, just kind of keep adding guys and are kind of getting better. So, those teams that are going to be, I know the playoffs slightly expanding this year, going to be three teams in each division that make the playoffs, but it'll be fun to see how it ends up playing out. But it really looks like those teams that got kind of close to the title, or even LA themselves, as I just mentioned, are kind of really gunning to do it again, and are definitely improving as the year goes on.
Well, speaking of New York, we've had players joining them, and now this player that's leaving them, Rob Irimescu, is leaving New York, but will be joining Old Glory DC. And another player that will be joining him there is William Talalena from the Southland Stags in New Zealand. Over in Houston, we have the addition of Kian Meaden from Sharks. Now, this is not the same Sharks as Will Chambers. This is the Sharks from South Africa. And over in San Diego, we got some signing news and some other news as well. Benjamin Grant will join San Diego from the Queensland Reds in Australia. And announced today on Tuesday, the 14th of December, San Diego Legion will be playing their 2022 season from San Diego State University Sports Deck. Now, this is a facility that's mainly used for San Diego State's soccer teams. And the interesting thing of why it's called the Sports Deck is because it's held above a 2-story parking lot. So you never have to worry about parking because it's obviously under the stadium.
Well, that's probably good, man. It's probably quick access from the field to the parking lot for the fans too, right? Like,
yeah, it should be, absolutely.
There's some stadiums in the world, man, where leaving the stadium is a pain. Like, it's annoying. So I mean, that sounds like it's quite convenient.
Yeah, so interesting thing about it is also that the capacity is going to be reduced from what fans expect at Torero Stadium. Is that instead of 6,000, it's now down to 3,000. And that may just be because of like structural limits. There's seating for 1,500. So I think what the Legion will be doing is bringing in bleachers just to fill out seating. It is a field with a track surrounded by it. So maybe there'll be seating on the track as well whilst games are going on, especially at the start of the season where it shouldn't hopefully be interfering with the athletics.
And this must be a huge parking garage.
Well, yeah, if you can have a rugby field on top of it, then it's going to
a rugby field and a track on top of it with are the stands on top of it?
I believe so. It's kind of hard to tell.
Good use of space, I guess, for the San Diego State University, but
there does appear also to be some absolutely like great views of the local area, which I'm assuming is the rest of the university campus as well, from the stadium.
Does it beat? I haven't looked at a picture yet. Does it beat Utah though?
There are mountains, so
you're hesitating.
They're not as close, and they're not as picturesque from a couple of the images I've seen. So, you know, we'll have to see. And also, if the camera's pointed the other direction, then we just see, you know, a parking lot behind the parking lot. Then,
no, looks the
you know, maybe it's not that great. But you know, especially because San Diego last year, you know, they were going to Vegas, then they were going to Dignity Health, then going to Chula Vista, and only playing 2 games at Torero Stadium to know where they're going to be for the duration of the 2022 season. It's got to be a massive weight off the supporters' minds.
3,000 is that too small?
Well, it's half because it's half the limit, it's half the capacity of Torero Stadium. So then again, this is only what's available on the San Diego website. On the State University website. So you can only get so much information. Obviously,
San Diego probably sells out a 3,000 seat stadium though.
Like, yeah, and that sells out 3,000 just for home supporters. So it may be a case of the Legion even having more seating as a result. Obviously, that is dependent on what the building is capable of holding, but there's obviously the space for it because there's the running track around it. But you know, this will all be answered come February of next year, and we'll hopefully get to see like the great views of the California mountains behind, and you know, the campus as well. And you know, like I said, it's just a weight off everyone's minds. So that seems to be it for the news. If you are looking to watch some rugby this weekend, we've got some good news. Not about the cost, but about where you can watch it. Is the Champions and Challenge Cup is viewable on epcr.tv. You can get round packages, so those games that you'll be able to see for the entire weekend as well. So
yeah, it's like £20 a round, or like $8 a game, which seems is that excessive? Like,
well, I'm trying to compare. So
you got to watch 3 games to justify the price of the entire round.
And that's for the Challenge and Champions Cup as well.
Yeah, but either way, you still have to watch 3 games to justify based on like how much they're charging per individual game.
But the good thing is there's games on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so you can space it out. Maybe you can catch 2 games a day over for each day of the weekend. Then you watch 6, and then you've basically
that's going to add up as
back.
the competition goes on, though. But
well, that's the thing. So this week will be round 2, and then there'll be a pause as we return to the Premiership and URC. That will be on Sportsnet. And coming up will be the festive derby. So that'll be the Welsh teams against each other, Irish teams against each other. And obviously in the Premiership, it'll be as local a team as you can get playing one another, either around Christmas and Boxing Day, maybe Christmas Eve as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Stu, I know this isn't our former co-host, Dan. He always had this tradition of starting the podcast without talking about rugby. I'm going to kind of switch it up a little bit on you because I know you're a really big F1 fan. So as somebody that is not really an F1 fan, what the hell happened was it Sunday? What happened? What happened on Sunday? I do not understand this crazy, this controversy that has occurred. Max Verstappen obviously is the champ. I cannot wait till Netflix, because this is probably gonna be amazing on Netflix, the Drive to Survive series. But as a F1 fan that really only watches Drive to Survive, because it's amazing, but what the hell happened? I don't why is everyone so mad at the FIA right now?
Well, the good thing, Derek, is that I've had other rugby friends of mine ask for this in rugby terms. So I'm going to try
rugby terminology. Let's go. All right.
Okay. So after Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton led all match, Red Bull got their subs on whilst Mercedes didn't. The refs then made an on-field decision before the TMO overruled them, and they changed the decision on the fly. On the final lap, Max Verstappen kicked a drop goal to win the race and the championship with it.
Okay. So you said the refs changed the decision. Because obviously your subs reference, I'm assuming, is referring to the tires.
That is correct.
I did see something about Max had fresh set of wheels.
So,
but I just don't. Yeah. So
Mercedes made Nicholas Latifi, a Canadian, crashed.
Oh, Canadian. All right, Canadian shout-outs on this podcast. We're all about that. Unless he did something bad, and then.
So he got his tires dirty. He didn't have the traction. He spun. He crashed into the wall. There was a lot of debris on the track. That meant the safety car had to come out. And because of the circumstances of the race, Lewis and Max are on the same points, which meant that Lewis would have to beat Max in order to win the championship. So it was basically last race, winner takes all kind of scenario. Lewis was leading, and Mercedes said, if you pit now for fresh tires, you will lose track position.
Okay.
And because you'll be behind the safety car, there's no guarantee that the race, because if the race finishes under safety car, then whoever's first will win the race.
Right.
So that was their logic. Max, being second, realized, I've got nothing to lose. So Red Bull decided to pit him, put him on the soft tires, fresh tires, and then they were out under the safety car. So Max was able to pit, and therefore he could stay in second. And if the race finished, he would lose the championship. So his mind, just go for it. So in Formula One, the rule is normally that any car that is lapped whilst under the safety car can unlap themselves. So then everyone's in the correct order. So Lewis will be first, Max will be second, whoever's third is third, fourth, and then in that order.
Yeah.
Because as the race goes on, certain cars are faster than other and just overtake other cars. And they said, so it's either you unlap yourself or you're not allowed at all, and because of the way that the cars were lined up and because Max had pitted, even though he was second in the race, there were 4 or 5 cars ahead of him between Lewis and Max.
Okay. I'm following.
So that was what it was announced originally. And then the race director, Michael Massey, said, those cars between Lewis and Max, we're going to allow them to go ahead of the safety car and unlap themselves.
Ooh.
And so the problem with this is that all the cars behind Max that were lapped were not allowed to unlap themselves.
Oh, so they were just like, this is going to be really, they were just like, this is going to be really fun. Get these guys that have no impact on this race out of the way, please.
Yeah, essentially. And then as that was announced, because normally what would happen is you get one extra lap with the safety car to unlap yourself. So you're not immediately overtaking people and causing or getting in anyone's way.
Yeah.
However, it was then announced that after those 5 cars had gone past the safety car would be coming in that lap, which meant that Lewis and Max were right next to each other.
Oh, so Max was able to make up like the ground during like the caution or whatever.
Exactly. And this also meant that Max was on fresher tires. Lewis was on multiple laps, old tires, worn tires that would get him to the end, but aren't the same as fresh tires. So as soon as it comes to the first overtaking opportunity, Max takes the inside line, gets ahead. To be fair, Lewis did put up a bit of a fight, but it was one of those, time ran out kind of scenarios. And Max goes around a few corners and becomes the Netherlands' first ever Formula One world champion.
So like, how mad should I be about this? Because like, does everyone because I've always kind of heard that Lewis Hamilton is kind of like the Tom Brady is kind of the analogy that I've
he is. I want this to go on record now. Lewis Hamilton will go down as the greatest Formula One driver of all time. He's had more wins, he's had more podiums, he's had more pole positions.
Yeah.
He has won in every single season that he's competed in Formula One. No other driver has that honor bestowed for them. And I am fairly certain that come the end of the 2022 season, he will be an 8-time world champion and by every metric will go down as the greatest. But I also feel that what Max Verstappen has done and what Red Bull have done also earns recognition as well. So how annoyed should you be as a Red Bull fan? Fairly okay with it. As a Formula One fan, I'd be pretty miffed. And as a Mercedes or Lewis Hamilton fan, you know what? I'm pretty sure you're still angry. So I'm going to just say, yeah, I feel for you, man. I feel for you.
Deserved anger.
It is fully deserved anger.
What's the rugby analogy for who Mercedes is though? Like what team lines up with Mercedes and Lewis?
So Mercedes are one of the most successful teams of all time, definitely the most successful in the current era of cars. So I would probably put them as like the New Zealand or South Africa of Formula One teams.
Oh, so I like those teams, so I should be angry. Is that what you're saying? Angry. Oh, well, then I'm angry. God damn it, Max Verstappen. That call by the FAA was terrible. You don't deserve to win.
Come on.
Sad. What?
No.
I don't know.
It's not his decision that they decided to bring the safety car in.
Yeah, but I still hate him all the same. So plus I can't even drink Red Bull. So,
Well, there you have it, Dutch and Belgian fans. Derek Brissett hates Max Verstappen. Make sure you send all hate mail to him. But if you want to send a complimentary mail of how good a job we're doing or anything we could improve on, such as Derek learning to be able to drink Red Bull, you can email us at rougerugbypodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to interact with us on social media, we're on all the platforms. We're working on the TikTok, I will admit. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Rouge Rugby. And if you'd like to hear more of our episodes, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Music, and on Anchor FM. Derek, if people want to find you over the holiday season on social media for all your updates, where can they find you?
At Brissette the Jet across all social media platforms. And it's I hope everybody has a safe and happy holiday season. And it's been another absolutely wild year. And I've kind of realized something too. Like me and Dan started this podcast like halfway, probably actually closer to like 3/4 of the way through the 2019 MLR season. And then obviously, in 2020, like the world went to hell and every sports were canceled across the board and we didn't really have an MLR season. So it kind of feels like this year 2021 is like kind of like the first full Rouge Rugby year that we've had to do. We got a full MLR season. We got a maybe not quite as full as it would normally be, but I'm going to still call it full test window in the summer, full test window in the fall. A whole bunch of competitions in between. We talked about the university rugby, we talked about the Coastal Cup, as we've just spent the past hour really doing as well. And so it's been kind of fun. We got we just got the first real full year under our belts here, Stu. So I don't know how you feeling about it going. Looking forward. You excited for next year? See, keep kind of growing here.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some great times with Rouge Rugby. As you said, like our first full year. Maybe the results didn't go the way we'd like, but here's hoping that next year we can do a full season.
Yeah.
Talking about how Toronto lift the shield and Canada getting a few more wins on their column. I'd also like to say that if you want to find me on social media, I'm mainly on Twitter and Instagram. The handle is Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. And if you're watching this on YouTube, well, it should be just below me right there. As you can tell, this will be our final episode for the 2021 season, as a season year.
Yeah.
Unless big news comes through, and considering our upload schedule and our recording schedule, that'll be tomorrow. So, but if that doesn't happen, we want to wish you a very happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, and we look forward to you joining us again next year in 2022.